Okay, so I'm going to clean the back up now, ready to start assembling the top. So I need a back. So so we'll go back a few videos whenever I bent this thing and it's dried now. But maybe those of you who are very astute will see that this is actually not the same arm. I needed an arm and I stole that one and I bent another one. So one thing I had said whenever I bent this arm rail is that I use wooden pegs and it eventually breaks and wears out the hole and all that. And I said something you could put in metal in there, but I never do. Well, after I said that, I thought about it and I said, well, why don't I do that? So, lo and behold, I just went ahead and I didn't want to, redo, well, that won't come out, this doesn't come out. I didn't want to redo the holes or anything like that, so there's 7/16" holes, and I got some pipe, cut it dropped down in the hole. I don't know what size that pipe is. And then I got more pipe and cut it drops down in that hole. And boy, I should have done it a long time ago. It just works. It works great, so I'd highly recommend doing that. Very cheap, very easy to do, and makes your form last longer, and also even the bend's better because the wedge doesn't have a tendency to start cutting into that peg and moving it and tearing it up. So anyway, so enough of that. So we'll take this thing off. Now, people ask all the time, one of the most common questions I have is, how long does it take it to dry? Well, that depends on where it is and how dry it is where you have it. If it's wintertime in my shop, it's near my wood stove, a couple of weeks be fine. If it's summertime in July, it'll never dry. So I'll take it into I have a little kiln in the basement that will hold this back, and I'll put it in there. So maybe it'll set out for a couple of weeks. I'll put it in the kiln, and 48 hours at 140 degrees will set that bend. Another question I get is, how much spring back do you get? Well, if I dry it hard in that kiln, not only will I not get spring back typically, but it will even come in a little bit with me. But if you're not drying it good enough and having to take it out of the form, then you might want to overbend it. But I usually go for the exact bend. So the distance right here is 19, and this might spread just a tad bit. I actually never did put this one in the kiln, but it's been in the shop with the stove and all that, so we'll see. So down here, as you can see, this is where I put the wedge underneath it to turn those handholds out. So that was underneath this side, so it tilted that handhold, so when I put it in the chair, those handholds will tilt out instead of either being flat or the ugly tilting in. So let's pop this thing off. There we go. So if we look at that, if I put that back on there, you can see that it's tied up against that form. Now, of course, sometimes you take it off and it's tight, and you look at it 2 hours later and it's spread, but I don't think this one's going to spread. It's going to spread at all. Not any fibers broken there. And we're looking really good on both those elbow bends. So I'm going to start cleaning it up. The first thing I do is I clean up the bottom of one of those elbow bends on the side vise over here. So we'll go over there next. So I'm going to clamp it up in the vise right like that, and that's the area that I'm going to start cleaning up. So I'll clean up there and then the sides right there right now. So I protect it with a piece of leather. Get it down as far as I can to give it support. Okay, there we go. Now work it with a spokeshave. So look to see if there's any breakage right here. There's a little fiber right there, so if there's any problem at all, you want to make sure that you shave every bit of that out, because after you paint it and you start steel wooling it, those little loops on the steel wool will pick up anything, and that is not the time when you want to pull a big chunk of wood off your chair. And you know, if you have a break that runs right across right like that, it usually can't be fixed. If you have one of the kind of delamination breaks that's running with the long wood fibers, you know, if you want, years ago I used to glue those things down, and you can glue them down and you can make it to where nobody can even see it. But I really don't even fix them anymore. If I can't shave it out, I'll just make another back. It's so fast for me to make another back. I don't mess with it. But certainly it's legitimate to glue that back up and you know, smooth it off. But I don't have hardly anything there. Maybe a little something right there. So you see I'm supporting it back here with my belly, actually sitting right on my belt. Okay, and now I've got that part to get to right there, which is a little bit tough, but I can usually do it like that. So that's nice and smooth there. If you don't get it smooth enough, then you just go to the scraper and scrape. So now I'm going to go to these sides right here. It works better if I do it this way. And that's not cutting quite clean enough for me. So I'm going to scrape that. And get over to this side. And that side cut clean. And then I've got this bevel on the bottom, if you remember when I did that. So, but I left it, I'd only beveled to right there. So now I'm going to blend that in and knock that corner off right there. Now you don't want to come in too far because you got a hole being drilled right here. You don't want that hole to get into the bevel. Okay, got that side, and now while you're not looking, I'll do the other side, and then we'll go to the back. I'm going to clean up the outside of the bend here, and I'm going to try to do it with spokeshave. I like to leave, because spokeshave's finished cut if I can do it with spokeshave. But if I can't, then I'll come back in with a scraper and scrape out any little tears. So I like to do this in my tail vise, and there's cork in the jaws, so not damaging the back any. Probably should have taken it down a little bit further. It might give me a little bit too much flex in there, but I'll see if I can hold it. So doing a little bit of skewing with it. You don't want to go too much, you just want to clean it up. You want to maintain that good clean edge right there, crisp edge, that looks good through the paint. Oh, pretty good. Maybe a little tear right here. And sometimes your bend will twist a little bit, and I can see that this face is in just a little bit, which crowns this just a tad, so I'm going to fix that. Take it down out here a little bit more. Make it look a little better. There it goes. Doesn't take much, usually. So now just right up at the top. Okay. Now I'll get the inside. Now the inside is a lot tougher to get because that's where the compression is. And you've got these little compression bumps from the bend. So I've got the spokeshave that's radius front to back. Sometimes I can cut it. Most of the time I can't. Most of the time I have to go to the scraper to fix it up. Well, so far so good. I don't expect that to keep up. So maybe a little bit right over here. The radial plane back here cuts a little rougher, and so this is, yeah, right there. This one tore just a little more. There's just little white tears, but they'll show through the paint. If I wasn't painting it, might be able to get by with that, but paint shows up about everything. Wrong spokeshave. Okay, now what we lack is a face here. So I'm going to take this to the shaving horse and show you how I flatten that, and then I'll be putting the bead in it and all that stuff. So I'm going to flatten the face here, and there's a couple of things that usually goes on with the face. Well, more than that. There could be a little tear out from where I was originally shaping it out of green wood, and I'm in that radial plane. It doesn't cut so clean, so there could be a little tear out I'd be after. there would be some bumps like this from the bend, especially right on the inside. You can feel them if you run your finger across that. And then there could be some slight twisting one way or the other whenever I bend it. So I'm going to take all of that out with the spoke shave. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this flat. Now what I'm after is a slightly crowned face. But right now I'm going to flatten it. So right here I've got a little twist that way, and I've got a little twist that way. But if I just hold the spoke shave just in one plane flat, it'll fix both of those. So there's that one. So now from here on up to right there, it's slightly tilted that way. You want to remark the piece. You don't want to lose your center. We're going to need that. Now the twist goes back the other way. Okay, that looks pretty flat. There's some tears in it, but I'm not going to do anything about them right now. So now I'm going to give it a crown, slight crown. Okay, that ought to do it. Now I'm going to clean it up a little bit. Now if you've bent this to where the radial plane's looking at you right here, which I have, one of the disadvantages is cutting this bead. The radial plane's tough to cut in. You've got all of those medullary rays that are showing themselves there, and they throw you off, either with the spoke shave, with the scraper, with the scratch beater that I'm coming in with. So that would be one advantage into turning it 90 degrees, and you'd have the tangential face here and the radial plane up here. But whenever I bend it, I discuss the pros and cons of bending it one way or bending it the other, and it ends up being 6 1/2 dozen another, so take your pick. But right here is one of the disadvantages to the way that I bend it. You can hear that popping. even with the scraper, and that's those medullary rays, that scraper catching those rays. Now, at this point, you can decide if you want to cut a bead into it. And I like to put a pretty heavy bead, but I do it with a scratch beater. Now, this is a regular Stanley scratch beater, and I think Lee Nielsen makes a copy of it. But you don't have to have something like this to put a good bead into there. For years, I didn't have one of these. I just had a block and just saw a kerf in it, and take you a piece of tool steel and cut whatever design that you want right into it there and clamp it in the block. Run the block around through there. It works every bit as good as this, but this is a nice cool tool to use, and I had it given to me many years ago by David Hughes, so it's fun to use. So that's what I use now. So if you take the blade out for you there, so you just take a piece of tool steel and just file in whatever shape you want, or the opposite of the shape that you want. And so you see I've got the crown right there of the face, or half the crown, and then the bead right there that it's going to cut. Okay, I'll stick her back in there. Now if you want to do something really simple and just scratch a little line in there and kind of create some semblance of a bead, which a whole lot of old chairs that I've seen had that in them, then you just take this is just a slotted screw, and I've just kind of sharpened the slot just a little bit, slot still in there, and just screwed it into this piece of wood, and you can just hold it right like that and pull it around, and it's amazing the nice little bead that will cut, or the scratch, the groove that it will cut, and then you can round that over to create the bead. So I used that before I ever made scratch beaters, and I still have it lying around for classes that I teach. So this right here, if I kind of start the bead just a little bit below where that relief is. Most of the time I don't put a mark or pay any attention to it. I just get close. So I'll show you the beginnings of this, and we'll get a good close-up of it, and then no reason in showing you the whole thing. A little rough right there. I have to take care of that. Maybe I'll do it right now. That's a little better. And I can come back with this thing if I lay it down, and kind of like a cleanup cut. Bottomed out there, I think. Come around, switch sides. So there we go. If you can see in the close-up, man, I know you can't see it as good as I can see it, but you've got a crown right here, then it goes into the groove, and then it comes out with this little small bead. And if that's a little sharp on both sides, so I'll knock that off with the spoke shave a little bit, and it really shows up nice in with paint on it. So, well, I'll finish up this bead, and then we'll start boring some holes.